So welcome to today's broadcast, which I've just decided to do. It's something I've been thinking about the last couple of days, and I'm going to be talking about the Elder Futhark runes and the Old Norse, and getting some context about where the runes started and what place they had in the society. So we know a fair amount in some ways because we have texts that you'll find in the Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda. Of course, we don't know how accurate this information is, and academics spend a lot of time discussing it all and who's right and who's wrong, and there's fashionable theories that come and go across time, but we make our best of, what there is. It's thought that the Elder Futhark, which is the most commonly used rune set, comes from about 150 to 800 CE. So that is based on when the runes were first written down, or carved, I should say. It's quite likely that the runes were used before then, because in many sacred languages, when the languages have started, they've kind of been in the hands of the priesthood, or the sacred professions, shall we say. And it's been a fairly common theme that things didn't get written down until quite some time later, because initially it was felt that it was too profane to write them down. These were like words from the gods, shall we say. Well, let me just move my computer down a bit. These were words from the gods, so you couldn't possibly sort of commit them to anything like, to do with the world. Rudolf Steiner thought that runes were much older than this, and there was also quite a popular idea in 16th century Sweden that they came from Atlantis, which is interesting. I've also heard a really lovely mythology, I suppose, that the runes were created in the Big Bang at the beginning of the universe. And it's a really nice way to think of it, because each energy of the rune creates a circle which holds all the energy of the cosmos. They are like the creation story. So I really like that one. So, but anyway, as our records show, the Elder Futhark existed from was used from about 150 to 800 CE, which is not the Viking era. The Viking era came after that, and they used the younger Futhark from 800 to 1100 CE. Now, Christianity came to Scandinavia around about 1000 CE. Definitely in Denmark, anyway, because I live in Denmark, so I know that for sure, which was much later than, say, England. But what I was really been thinking about, and what I wanted to talk about, was how, when the runes first were used, they were used mainly by those in the sacred profession. So I wanted to read you this list from Maria Kvilhaug from here. She is a Norwegian scholar, and when I first read this, I was like really wowed by how many different professions there were. So we start off with Saver, which is magic, sorcery, witchcraft, divination, oracle and shamanism. Galdr, which is spells, songs and charms. And I've been taught that it was the runes that they used for Galdr. Blot, which is sacrifice. And they were, you know, quite big into sacrifice. But if we stop thinking about blood for a second and just think about, it was all about balance. If you took something, you had to give something. So it was more so that you were keeping things in balance. That's why you did sacrifice, not because you were a bloodthirsty psychopath that liked blood baths. Son, that's atonement, which is also sacrifice. Ve, that's sanctuary, sacred space. Right, let's get down to like the sacred professions. Vulva, that's a sacred wand carrier, witch, priestess, oracle. Seidh Kona, that's a sorceress or witch. Seidh Mother, that's a sorcerer, so a male witch, we could say. Seidh Berenda, magical womb, transsexual sorcerer, male to female. Interesting. Skald, bard, poet. Going back to that sort of transsexual sorcerer, that is very common in a lot of sacred spiritualities, that transgender shaman witch is seen as very, very magical and is, you know, honored in that way. Thul, chanter, one who recites, sage, poet, priest. Gothi, priest or god. Gurya, priestess or goddess. And then you have a Blot Gothi, which is a sacrificial priest, and so on, and a Hof Gothi and Gurya. What struck me when I read this was these were very much part of society. They weren't a hobby. They were in the fabric and in the structure. And this is also how the runes were. So we think of the Old Norse, they thought very differently to us. They had different values, different beliefs, a different culture. And working with the runes, it's quite useful to be able to tap back into that magical ability. So when the runes were first used, as in the Elder Futhark, they used them for sacred purposes. It wasn't used for language and communication or anything mundane in the way that we think of it now. It was used by people who really believed in magic, who really believed in fate. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but you could sort of say that they didn't take a step without casting some runes to see what they said. Like any battle, any decisions, the runes would always be consulted to see what the gods would say. Going back to earlier when I was saying about the dates, I really, this is lovely to go and look at on the internet. There's the Culverstone, Culverstein. It's the earliest known sequential listing of 24 runes of the Elder Futhark. And that was found in a grave burial mound in Gotland in Sweden. And you spell that Kylverston. So, you know, I've been thinking about like where the runes came from and how they evolved. The Younger Futhark, by the way, which was used then for like marker stones, like this land here belonged to Cern, son of Cern. They used the Younger Futhark for that, and there was only 16 letters in the Younger Futhark. So as it evolved and became more mundane, the amount of letters actually went down. And I know, I've read about that. I mean, to my mind, that seems quite possible that it was easier for people to learn because there was less letters. I don't know though. I can't remember what the official spiel is on that. But so yeah, so I wanted to talk about like where the runes came from because, you know, as a lot of you know, I work with the runes for our evolutionary process as we are today, and I've called that ascension runes to sort of delineate, like, I'm working with it in this specific way. But then it's really, really important to look at the history and where the runes came from. And the Old Norse, they used the runes a lot for warfare and for fighting and for everyday life. I mean, they used it for everything. And they would have been like hurling runes at their enemies. I mean, magically, not carving them out and physically hurling them, although they may have done that, who knows, but they would have been like hurling them magically to like harm their enemies. And today we can look at, if you take the negative of something and say, well, what's the positive of that? Then it can give us all sorts of uses of the runes in a much more ascended way, shall we say, or new earth way, maybe is a better way. I prefer to use the term embodied ascension to sort of show like we're not desperately trying to get away from the earth. And that is another thing that's really lovely about working with the runes. The Old Norse were a very, very pragmatic, practical people, and I still see that very much in the Danes, in the society where I live today. And when you're doing magical work and spiritual work and healing work, you need to bring it down into the pragmatic. So the runes often, for me, are that last bit of grounding and that last bit of manifesting, maybe a whole piece of work that make it actually happen rather than just sort of floating around up here. And let me just take a moment and see if I've covered it. But basically, when the runes, the older Elder Futhark was sort of in its heyday, I don't think anybody would have thought of using it to send a letter to their friends. That would have been like, oh, you know, it was for oracular work, it was for magical work, it was for sacred work, making offerings, and so on and so forth. And you know, when we use it today, if you start working with the Elder Futhark in this way, all those many years of it having been worked with by the Old Norse, and you know, it was spread around all over Northern Europe, including Britain, all those people working with it, it means that it's made it much more powerful tool, a much more powerful tool. So I think that was it. I think that's what I wanted to say. I just wanted to give a bit of background to the Ascension runes because I don't do that. I don't do that very often, and it's really important to talk about like where it came from. I suppose the other thing I wanted to say is because I've read quite a few like academic books now, because there's a huge academic library about the Old Norse. And that has created like a huge body of knowledge. But it's important to remember that the theories that have come out of that knowledge are only theories, which is why, if you can, it's so good to actually go back to the sources themselves, which of course, you know, somebody has translated from Old Norse or Old English. And that's why, you know, scholars such as Maria Kvilhaug are so important, because she's translating it. She has quite a lot of metaphysical interest. but she's also a scholar. And so she can hold those two things and come out with some really, really interesting things. But I suppose I just wanted to say, because like when I read rune books, there's a lot of, oh, this means this and this means this. And actually a lot of that is based on some male academic scholar 50, 100 years ago or something that decided this meant this. And it's sort of like, let's not be so black and white about it. Let's be a little bit more open to what it might mean, which is why it's so important to journey on the runes and not be so, because as soon as you say this is definitely this, you've shut out all the possibility of everything else, and that is not the energy of the runes. The energy of the runes is open, it's vast. I'll stop there. I think that's what I wanted to say. Lots of blessings, everybody. Bye for now.